Good morning, everyone. I'm going to get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is stick this slide deck into the chat so that you have access to it. This LearnOn webinar, starting here at 11 o'clock, is on free social studies and history content resources. I want to thank you for being here with us today for our LearnOn. This is our team. I am Nicole Bond. I'm the Educational Technology Specialist here at Lincoln Intermediate Unit 12. But I would like to point out that all of these individuals are fantastic resources and have contributed in many ways, either to bringing our LearnOn website up to speed and or hosting or facilitating various webinars. So please feel free to reach out to any of us. But if you need to contact me, that's my email right there highlighted for you. So if you've been to our Zoom webinars throughout last week, you may be aware of some of our new webinar meeting norms for this particular webinar. I would like to point out that the microphone and camera has been disabled for you, but what I have done is actually opened up the chat a little bit. So if you end up wanting to post into the chat, you can. I will ask though, if you have questions, just for me, it makes it easier for me to see your questions if you post them in the Q&A. And the Q&A is this little box down here that you should see at the bottom of your screen. If you post your questions in there, I can make sure I actually get to them. Sometimes with chat, questions can get buried as the chat continues and I might lose track of them. So posting it in the Q&A is the easiest way for me to see and address questions. At the end or throughout, if you have something that you would like to comment on, if you raise your hand, I can give you the ability to unmute and speak up and ask your question if you would like to. And lastly, I want to remind you not to leave before the Act 48 credit link is shared with you for the completion of the webinar. It should push out as soon as I close out my screen. I will try to post both the evaluation and the Act 48 form in the chat before we leave though, in case you need it. So those of you who aren't familiar, I'm going to go through several slides that you maybe have seen before if you've been in our webinars. I'm going to try to do it quickly. So again, with the Act 48, just a reminder that you will need your PPID for that and that this is only available for Pennsylvania educators. But if you're from out of state, we welcome you. Additionally, our webinar archives can be found at this particular link, which you have access to. It is also on our website under recorded webinars, which is under For Educators, where you can find every single webinar from the last week, as well as this one when we're finished. And our resource site here is learnon.iu12.org. I'm going to push you out to that site towards the end of this particular webinar so that you can see all of the free content resources that we have posted there. So just a reminder on the changing expectations for online learning. While this webinar will not be a less is more webinar, the idea is that less is more, that it's important to prioritize and balance your curriculum. My goal is to show you a host of different content resources so that you can pick the one or maybe two that work for you and your needs with your students. The idea is not that I'm going to give you all of these resources and the expectation is that you use all of these resources. It's really so that you have an idea of what might be the best fit for your particular situation. As a reminder, when you do use video, it's really important that if you're screencasting, just like I'm doing here, that you share your face with your students. They probably haven't seen you in a little while, so they'll be happy to see you, even if it's in a recording, just being yourself on video. Additionally, whenever possible, try to keep your videos to no more than 6 minutes. There is data to show that after 6 minutes, student engagement tends to drop off. So if you can even keep it shorter than that, the shorter the better with students. They typically don't want to be on a video for very long, and I know sometimes it's hard. So what I really suggest is that you chunk your lessons when you go to do a screencast or any kind of video to keep it shorter, to keep them more engaged with the content. Additionally, I just want to remind you that it's important that we're really clear with our objectives and expectations. We want to make sure that our students know exactly why they're logging in, what they're doing, and why they're doing it whenever possible. And if possible, try to identify the amount of time you think it might take to complete the task. It doesn't have to be exact minutes. It could just be a window of time. That way when a student logs in, they know, oh, okay, this is only going to take 10 to 15 minutes. I have time for this right now. I shouldn't save it until later. Or maybe I do need to save it until later because I don't have quite that amount of time to complete the task because mom or dad has to use a computer or my brother needs to use it, et cetera, et cetera. Lastly, I cannot stress this one enough. Try to organize and sequence your instructions. If at all possible, try to provide a checklist for parents and students so they know exactly what they need to be doing for you. A lot of parents I've had that are friends of mine have reached out to me like, hey, I don't know how to keep track of what my student needs to do. If you provide a checklist, it's going to make everything work a little bit more smoothly. So our outcomes for today are simply to identify some tools which could be used for teaching social studies and history content. Now, a lot of these tools, some of them are going to involve logins. Some of them are going to be resource sites where you can find good resources that you can pull and use for different things that you're teaching in your classroom. The one thing I do want to remind you is that this is a short webinar. This is really, really quick and dirty. All right, I'm just giving you what I got, showing you what I can in a short period of time. I only have about 30 minutes that I can go over all of these tools. So it's really important, if you need more information about their implementation, that you reach out either to your tech or instructional coach if you have one at your district, or please feel free to reach out to me if you have specific questions. If I can't answer them, I will definitely direct you to somebody who can. All right, so our first resource today, and I'm going to apologize because I have you in full screen now, but I tend to work out of full screen. If you've been on any of my webinars, I'm going to pull us out of the full screen here in a second. So I'm going to show you Newsela, just because Newsela has a specific social studies curriculum, and Newsela has gone completely free for the rest of the school year, is from what I understand. If you need to access it when you go to newsela.com, what you will find is that there's an orange banner at the top. If you go to that banner, you can log in as a teacher under the circumstances, and it'll immediately give you access. I did it with my Google login in a matter of, I don't know, 5 minutes. It was super easy to set up a login. So I'm going to take you out here. So this is the Newsela. What I clicked on was the remote teaching toolkit. So there's some specifics in the remote teaching toolkit to help you out. For instance, details on how to use it with Google Classroom, some popular how-to videos to help you out. So I do want to make sure that you're aware that that link is in the slide deck if you need it. And these are sort of instructions on how to find things in Newsela. So I'm going to get us into the main site and log in so I can show you. But just to point out, Binder is where you find view classes and your assignments. Under your initials, and you go to settings, and that's where your classes will be. And then under subjects, you'll be looking at social studies. So let me go out to the main website. And I'd like to point out that Newsela has been today jumping to 502 errors, which probably means that it's getting hit really hard with educators using it for curriculum content. So one of the things I would always do if I was assigning something, I would check and make sure that the website's working that day, like log in at some point and be like, okay, is this website working? Is it a little slow? Can I tell my students that? All right, so after I've set up my account in Newsela, this is what it looks like when you log in. Here's that binder piece where I can see my assignments that I've given to students, summaries, power words, etc. This is my content. But if I go to subjects, I can go right to social studies, which is fabulous. So I do want to show this to you. Because under social studies, they already have it broken out in subjects here on the left-hand side. If we can get this baby to load, come on, Newsela. There we go. So you see there's some specific distance learning information, but if you go down here, we've got US history, UN development goals, cornerstone activities, rediscovering US history, world history, ancient civ, financial literacy. We have lots of resources down the left-hand side so you can start to look at and decide. Virtual museum tours. So I'm going to go to this one, geography. And you notice I can assign it without even looking at it. I can just create it or add it to an assignment if I want multiple pieces. Over here under distance learning, you'll notice they have entire units for United States history, ancient civ, civics. So I'm just curious, I'm gonna go under ancient civ. And you notice they have printable pieces in here as far as instructions are concerned. But I'm feeling ancient India today. And what would happen if I assign this unit is it would give them all of these pieces of ancient India, or I could decide that I only want to give them certain pieces of ancient India. So if I create assignment, I'm going to assign it to my test class, and I'll show you where to set up your classes here in a second. I can adjust the level. What Newsela does is as students do it and the more assessments that they take as they're reading, it'll adjust the reading level to the student's needs. That said, I can adjust it myself if I would like, if I wanted to start at a certain point. So I can give any specific instructions in here. You'll notice all those pieces are in here. I'm going to, like, I can delete if I say, oh, we don't need to read that one. That's not necessary, but we do want to read the rise of Hinduism, and I want to look at it in more detail. You'll notice the Lexile levels up here, but I can also change that when I'm looking at it. So that's the readability of the piece. So you'll notice that it's at the highest Lexile level, but I can drop it if I'd like. I can print it. So if I need to print to give it to certain students who don't have access, that's something I can do. I can add it to a text set. I can do a couple of different things in here. It's got some standards, and here you can see the text. So over here are the activities that are associated with this text. So you'll notice there's an ELA piece and a social studies piece. And I can edit them and change them. It's got a quiz in there, and I'm not going to go through that too much because I don't want anybody to see the answers. A social studies right. What are some reasons Hinduism stands out from other religions? And again, you can go in there and edit that and change it. And then lesson sparks are different resources that you can also, students can check out. So that just gives you a basic idea of how an article is set up here in Newseli. I'm gonna hit close. So I'm back here. I can assign it from here now that I've seen what I want. And now it's part of my classes. So it shows me as an assignment as it is in the classes. What I'm gonna do is go over here and go to settings, because I want you to see where you can add your classes. And you'll see I can add all kinds of details, and it'll start to curate based upon what I put in here. But if I go into classes, that I can sync it from Google Classroom. So it does sync automatically with my Google Classroom, or I can create a class up here. I can create an elementary content filter if I know I'm dealing with students for elementary, and then hit create class. So there's my class, and there's my class code. So if I want to add students, boom, there's my class code. I can send it to my students. So that's really quickly how you can use Newseli for social studies content. Does anyone have any questions about Newseli? Because I'm going to keep this train rolling. If you do, just put them into the Q&A box, or if you want to have any commentary or questions in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. Give us a moment while I get back over here to this guy. So you notice it has US history, ancient civ, civics, world history, geography, and economics in there. All right, I'll keep us moving. But I'm also going to just exit us. There we go. Oh, nice. I've been signed out. Okay, I see a Q&A while I'm signing back in. We're sending assignments to our entire third grade. To your knowledge, can I use that code for all of our third graders? Absolutely. If you want to just set it up with just your third graders, you can do it that way. And just send them that code. That would be one way to do it. They would all be in one class though. So I just want to note that for you. All right, Ken, the slide deck is not working for you. All I can say is that it will be uploaded in the recorded section. If you go to the recorded section of the LearnOn website, I can throw it back into the chat again. But sharing settings should be set for share with everyone. But since it booted me out of Google. All right, let's get this show back on the road here. There we go. All right, so the next thing I want to show you as far as resources are Khan Academy. Khan Academy has set up some remote learning resources specifically. our News ELA stuff. Actually, for some reason, Khan Academy is linked to Crash Course. I can fix that though. So here is the Khan Academy Help Center. How can Khan Academy be used for remote learning? And it goes into a little more detail and offers a whole bunch of resource guides as well as some upcoming webinars. So that's why I wanted to highlight that. Oh, we're over here, teachers. That's why I wanted to highlight that, because some of those webinars are today. For instance, on Thursday at 7:30 p.m., Best Practices for Social Studies is coming up. So you might be interested in checking that one out as far as Khan Academy is concerned. I'm going to fix the link here because I realize that this is incorrectly linked. So here is Khan Academy. If you're looking for courses, it's under the course button. And you'll find you have macroeconomics and AP courses in here: microeconomics, finance, US history, AP, grammar, as well as a multitude of other things by grade level. So it's a great resource to kind of hop through. I'm going to go over to US history since I spent some time with world history over there. And you'll notice the course summary is over here. So you can kind of choose how you would like to push this course out via Khan Academy. Khan Academy is more of a self-paced instruction, but sometimes it's nice to push students to a certain resource that you want them to look at or view. So you'll notice it starts with a video and includes practice. So I encourage you to go in and explore this one. I would just click around. It's more of a click around versus the idea of uploading classes. But it is a good resource if you're looking for videos to help supplement. And you can also go to YouTube and look up Khan Academy, and it's going to come up with videos as well. So that's very quickly Khan Academy. Take us back to our slide deck. Another resource that I wanted to highlight. Now, this one appears to be mostly Java-based, so if you're working with iPads, this is not going to be a resource for you. But it's an interesting resource, and I was not aware that this existed until recently. Active History is like a choose-your-own-adventure history resource. So if you go in, you'll have to join and log in, and they're leaving everything free right now for teachers, which is fabulous. So the login, they're going to send you an email. You have to reply to the email. Once you go through the login process, there are some great simulations in here that essentially the students get to make some choices. So I'm just going to go to Silk Road's Adventure. And you can play as a male or a female character. And it is assigned to someone. All right, I see a question from Jake. Seeing active history doesn't work with iPads. Does it work with MacBooks? I am on a MacBook right now, so I can tell you that it definitely does. I'm using it right now in my Chrome browser. Again, I encourage you to go into this one and kind of click through and see if it meets your needs. So you travel for 7 nights, cost of travel, 2 coins. And it gives you a video clip that sets the scene. So it walks students through a scenario, and they get to make choices, and based upon some of those choices, they get to see what the outcome is. So it's kind of like a living history, active history piece. I find it really intriguing. I find that it's pretty engaging. So again, this is another resource that I would suggest you click around and get to know. You'll see that they kind of have age groups up here. So age 15 through 18 and 11 through 14. You can use that as a guide. I'm not actually logged in, so you don't even see the full resources, but once you log in, you'll be able to see them. If you choose not to make a login, you can send students out to these things, which are already free on there as well, if any of those may fit into your curriculum. But the trial that you request for free, I think, is for 90 days. So it should last until the end of June. All right, I'm going to go back to our slide deck here. Next resource I'm going to show you is a little bit different. It's called Listenwise, and this is also a 90-day trial. Listenwise consists of online podcasts. And when I say online podcasts, not like 20-minute online podcasts, but short, sweet little podcasts, questions, and graphic organizers. And they have also opened up to a 90-day free trial. What I like about Listenwise is the fact that it's more about listening comprehension. So when you're looking for that differentiation piece with certain students, this is a great place for you to go. Let's see if I can just log myself in. All right. So you'll see I already have access to the premium version of this. The less than premium version means you can send students to it, but you can't really assign classes and that sort of business. So I'm going to go to classes here just so you can see. I can add my classes here. You'll notice again, I can import from Google Classroom if I have a class already set up in Google Classroom, but I can also create a class. So we'll just call this period 2. I can specifically set it up as an elementary classroom, so it'll make sure that the way you do login is proper for that. Accept my privacy policy. And I can ask my students to sign up by using this class code if I'm not going to use Google Classroom. So that's the way to sign up for that. You'll go over here to lessons and you'll notice the social studies. I can just look at social studies lessons. I can also search. So if I'm looking for something particular, maybe it's Egypt. I'm sorry, I'm a big world history buff. You'll see that I can find that information. It even gives me an approximate Lexile score. Let's see, camels, militias, and tourism. So I can assign the quiz, create an assignment, and you'll see it tells me the story is right down here. The story length is right here. So most of them are around 5-6 minutes max. So it really, that time period, it does a really great job. There's a transcript for any student who needs a transcript. That transcript can be printed so that if you have a student who can't get in here, that's an option. You can download it and print it. Your assignment resources. So these are the listening comprehension questions, discussion themes, vocabulary. They have a teacher's guide, so you can get an idea of how you want to introduce it, the standards that might be hit, related lessons at the bottom. So ways to scaffold what the quiz is, and I'm not going to show you too much of that because again, I don't want to give away the answers in case a student watches this. And your class activities. So you can add different pieces. So obviously a whole class discussion might be a little harder unless you're doing synchronous Zoom or Google Meet, but it's a guide in case you have another way that you want to do discussions. Maybe you want to post one of those questions in a Flipgrid and have students reply in Flipgrid. So this is also an option. You'll notice that the audio can be slowed down. So if I want to, I can assign the quiz to whichever class. We'll go test class 1. I can preview it. I can set a due date. I would always click this, or I can assign it by student. So if I want to differentiate, maybe I want a certain student needs this audio, so I'm going to just assign it to that student or this group of students, or a certain student you want to offer enrichment for. So that would be an option. I can also, while I'm in here, assign it to another class, which I always find handy. So then I'm not hitting the same thing 3 or 4 times in a row. So this is Listenwise. And they do work as a partnership with NPR. If you're wondering where a lot of the audio comes from NPR. So Listenwise. And then the last set of resources I want to show you are other content resources. And you'll see I kind of put a little bit of description in here. DocsTeach is a great place for primary documents, if you're looking for primary documents for students. Obviously, you can find some stuff under National Geographic too. I didn't necessarily link it in there. This one's from the National Archives, but it's specifically set up for teaching. So you can create a login and start to build based upon DocsTeach, building your own activities or find other people's activities. So that's one resource. Actively Learn also has world and US history articles. If you're familiar with Actively Learn, If you haven't used that with students before, I kind of hesitate to suggest you start using that one because I feel like from a student perspective, it's a little more complicated. So I'm just putting it out there. Teaching Tolerance has a lot of articles and other resources for teaching tolerance, some of them historical. Facing History has some fabulous resources if you're going to assign some reading to students as well. And a lot of their stuff is specifically set up for educators. So if you go to educator resources up here, and you can search their collection for specific pieces. You'll notice they also have teaching during COVID-19. Most resources will have that banner at the top if there's something specific they've set aside for online learning. So that one was Facing History. The Stanford History Education Group is full of free lessons as well if you haven't been there before. K through 12 social studies. If you're looking just for a textbook, you're like, I need a textbook for my students. CK12 is a great resource for online textbooks, not just for social studies, for a lot of content areas. So I'm just going to show you this one really, really quick. You'll notice it's all sciences first. They have a ton of science, including elementary. Same with math. They have a ton of math. And here's your social studies. So we're going to go, let's go to sociology. We haven't talked about sociology. So you notice they have webinars coming up. A lot of these, the more robust resources have webinars. Look and see what they're offering. But you'll get an idea of what's in this textbook. It's a full, so you could jump to a chapter, say maybe you haven't gotten to these sorts of chapters because the textbook is now in the building and you don't have access and the students don't have access. You can utilize it this way. So that's CK12. PBS Learning Media. I like this one especially for their elementary resources. I think they're very, very appropriate. And you can look by grade, type, relevance. And this would be a situation where when I would use a resource, I would just send the link into Google Classroom or into Schoology. You'll notice they kind of have grade bands identified. And it's mostly video content. You can also look by subject level, including elementary up here. And this is the PBS learning site, which is working through WITF, who's also broadcasting free learning as well. And lastly, if you haven't used Crash Course, I used it as an English language arts teacher, but I also really enjoy some of the history material. One of the things that I have noticed when talking to a lot of my social studies friends is that a number of them are trying to find ways to compact that curriculum, which is really, really challenging because we're dealing with history, deciding what you're going to leave out because you're trying to fit so much in before the end of the year because you need to get to this point in history. That can be a challenge. I have had a number of educators say that they really like using Crash Course because it can take World War II and put it into 16 minutes. Does it hit everything? No. But it does kind of prioritize or help you prioritize some of the concepts you might want to go over with. Another thing about Crash Course is because it's in YouTube, you can pull it into Edpuzzle if you haven't used Edpuzzle before. If you haven't used Edpuzzle, if you go back into our LearnOn webinars, Charlie Travato does one on videos where he goes through how to use Edpuzzle. And I have a feeling there may be a tutorial that ends up posted in the tutorials coming up here to help walk you through how to use Edpuzzle. But that would be another way that you could use this particular resource. So the last thing I want to do is share with you the fact that our website has plenty of free content resources. If you haven't been to the LearnOn website, you will notice that most of these resources are in here under the Social Studies History tab, including others that I didn't even get into. So if there's anything in here that you're in particular looking for, like iCivics, including a podcast, please visit, check out what's in here. We went over active history. There's more information about Actively Learn in here, including some tutorials, the new ZLA social studies. So does I don't see any questions in my Q&A pod or in my chat. Does anyone have any questions about any of these resources here? It is now 11:30. I'm at exactly 30 minutes, so I can take a minute or two, answer any questions you guys have about these particular resources for you. Okay, if you don't have any questions, I just want to remind you that you can reach out to me at nabond@iu12.org. That's my email. If you email me, I'll try to get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, if at all possible. You can find all of our webinars as well as all of our resources at the learnon.iu12.org website, which is where I was showing you the free online content. And as I close out this webinar, just a reminder that I'd really appreciate it if you could fill out the Act 48 and the evaluation form, because that gives us feedback on other topics that we can cover and other resources that we can share. So I put those into the chat as well. All right, then I hope all of you have a wonderful day. We have another webinar here coming up at the top of the hour at 12 o'clock on resiliency with Phyllis. And I think that one's going to be a fabulous webinar as well. I hope you enjoy the beautiful Monday that we have today.